From the City of Angels off the Pacific Ocean, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be across the nation, around the world. I'm George Norrie. Welcome to Coast AM. Next hour, Dr. Doom, Ed Dames joins us. The kill shot. Need I say anything more? Here's what's happening. Well, they were shaking in Maine tonight. An earthquake based in Maine sent tremors through the entire region, prompting the phones to ring off the hook at the National Weather Service and police departments. The quake, registering 4.6 on the Richter scale, centered southwest of Lake Arrowhead in Maine, west of Portland, Maine. Nobody was hurt. Well, the second of three presidential debates held tonight, this one at Hofstra University in New York. President Barack Obama, the Democrat, Republican candidate Mitt Romney, Dr. John Curtis, onlinecolumnist.com. John, I watched the debate, and I thought the president did much better. He was much more aggressive than he was in the first one.
Well, I think he really had a difficulty transitioning from being, quote, presidential into being the gladiator. And remember that the movie Gladiator, Maximus said to the slave owner said to Maximus, the beating heart of Rome is not the marble of the Senate. It's the sand of the Colosseum. And things haven't changed in a couple thousand years because people want to see these two get down and take the fangs out and the nails and beat each other up, basically. And that's what we saw last night.
Were you impressed with the presentation by both candidates?
Well, I mean, Romney basically was very consistent, I think, and, he stuck pretty much to his talking points. I think Obama, on the other hand, really hit him with everything but the kitchen sink, all of the things he has said about Romney on the stump in many of his campaign ads. So I think that the overall performance, the overall, who won, who lost, I think it has to go to Obama because he had such a feckless performance in the first debate, and this one came off more aggressive and certainly more assertive.
All right, John, thank you so much. Dr. John Curtis, the final presidential debate will be held Monday night at Lynn University in Florida, gearing up, of course, for the election on November 6th. We've got our Insta poll going up at coasttocoastam.com right now. You can go and register your vote. The question is, who do you think won the second presidential debate? You can also look at the current results right now. Food stamps enrollment hitting a new record high. 46,681,833 million Americans are now enrolled in the social welfare program, according to the United States Department of Agriculture. That's the federal agency that runs that program. Criminal investigators from the Food and Drug Administration reportedly at the offices of the Massachusetts Compounding Pharmacy that's at the center of this nationwide fungal meningitis outbreak. U.S. legislators demanding that the Department of Justice investigate whether the New England Compounding Center violated federal laws or regulations. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says 233 illnesses, 15 deaths in 15 states linked to the outbreak. The salmonella outbreak linked to a New Mexico peanut supplier has expanded again with a voluntary recall of thousands of bags of whole peanuts by the Heinz Nut Company. The Dallas-based company recalled bags of salted jumbo Virginia in-shell peanuts for possible contamination with salmonella. The peanuts were processed by the Sunland Company of New Mexico. Federal inspectors have seized nearly 1,400 Chinese-made pirate costumes for Halloween being shipped to Seattle after high levels of lead were found in the buttons and the trim. The costumes, all worth about $10,000, had 11 times the legal limit for lead. South Carolina man who was found in a suspected mobile meth lab reportedly told police that he was ghost hunting in a cemetery. The 36-year-old man was charged by the Spartanburg Public Safety Department with manufacturing methamphetamine after an officer spotted 3 people standing near a pickup truck in the Oakwood Cemetery. Good news for Gary McKinnon. The Home Secretary in the United Kingdom, Theresa May, defying American authorities by halting the extradition of the British computer hacker Gary McKinnon, a decision criticized by the U.S. State Department, welcomed by campaigners and politicians across parties in the United Kingdom. The Home Secretary, Theresa May, said the reason she did this was because of human rights grounds, medical reports warning that the 46-year-old McKinnon was suffering from depressive illness and could kill himself if he was sent to the U.S. on trial. He was first indicted by an American grand jury back in 2002 for hacking into U.S. military computers, including the Pentagon and NASA, from his North London bedroom while he said he was looking for information about UFOs. And what happened in Webster Parish in Louisiana, according to numerous reports, a loud boom was heard in a secluded area of the Louisiana parish. According to the sheriff out there, he said something definitely happened, but what was it? One resident said she saw the sky light up with a bright orange color. Let's turn to Peter Davenport from the National UFO Reporting Center. Peter, did you get any calls on this one?
Not as far as I know, George. I've been out of town here for a few days, and I'm still sorting through accumulated reports and email. But as far as I know, we didn't receive anything from any of the principal witnesses to it. But generated a little preliminary interest. We thought it might be a meteor or meteorite if it hit the Earth, of course. But it sounds as though in the follow-up investigation, they pretty well determined that it was a stockpile of black powder that blew up in a bunker and created quite a boom. The one question I have about that report is, what is the military doing storing black powder? It's oftentimes unstable, and I have no idea what they would use black powder for unless it's fireworks on the 4th of July. So an interesting report, but I don't think it has anything to do with meteors or UFOs.
Not at this time. Peter, thank you so much. Peter's website linked up with our Twitter feed at coasttocoastam.com. One of the most incredible UFO stories I have heard in a long time, a couple of weeks ago, came out of Veterans Today, talking about a joint Chinese-U.S. naval operation. Why? Because maybe of an unfriendly extraterrestrial threat. We're going to talk with the senior editor of Veterans Today, Gordan Duff, in just a moment on Coast to Coast AM. And welcome back to Coast. I'm George Norrie. Gordan Duff, senior editor of Veterans Today, former UN diplomat, United States Marine Corps Vietnam combat veteran, deputy chairman of the board of European-based multinational companies. His career has included extensive experience in international banking, along with such diverse areas as consulting and counterinsurgency, surveillance technologies, intelligence. And we're tracking this story that was in the Veterans Today several weeks ago. It's an incredible story about Asian intelligence agencies reporting that a combined fleet operation between the U.S. and China has been going on against what possibly could be unfriendly extraterrestrial threats. It's an amazing story. We've got Gordan on the air here with us. Gordan, how are you?
George, I'm doing pretty well, George.
Good. It's good to have you with us. You know, I spent 9 years in the Navy, and I want to just thank you for your service, Gordan. Any relation to Jim Duff, who is a dear friend of mine in St. Louis? Because there's not many Duffs around.
I know. I don't think we're successful breeders. There's some evidence to that.
Tell me about Veterans Today, and then we'll get into this incredible story.
Well, Veterans Today began in just a little after 2000. It was set up by the U.S. Special Forces as a back channel for Special Forces people to be able to discuss off the record their own experiences. It was set up on servers outside the U.S. In around 2006, I took this side over, thought I would make it more international because we deal with a lot of allies, and to a great extent, people that serve in special operations have special problems. A lot of them suffer from post-traumatic stress.
Yes.
A lot of people that work special operations, Navy SEALs, U.S. Special Forces, Marine Force Reconnaissance, Naval Intelligence people, have a severe need to gossip and gossip with each other. And we needed to have people with the ability to speak with each other, and yet have people around with good enough sense never to publish any operational intelligence. So people are allowed to say to each other here pretty much anything, and almost nothing hits. And this is one of the unusual points I got into. I work for a large defense contracting firm as one of the senior officers. We do 35 billion euros a year. And when it came down having to deal with this story and hit the publish button after receiving 2 confirmations I only hope that the people who write my paychecks would forget my name was on the top of it.
I got to tell you, it's a story that went all over the place, Gordan. And how did it come to you? How did you pick this up?
The first thing I had about 4 days of reports. A couple of years ago, a Chinese submarine had fired a missile off the coast of really Los Angeles.
Yes, I remember that.
And that was, we have a lot of senior Air Force, a lot of NASA people with us. For instance, Clinton Baston, the chief nuclear weapons designer for the Department of Energy for 41 years, is one of our advisors. General Hamid Gul, former head of the ISI. Eugene Khrushchev from Russia's intelligence is one of our editors. So we have a broad group of people here, and so we had good reports from people when this Chinese rocket went up. They watched the plume. They knew what the fuels were. They knew it was a very primitive quality rocket compared to ours. We're wondering why the Chinese had done this. So we began watching the movements of the Chinese. We began watching the movements of the old Russian submarines in the Gulf of Mexico, the return of the Bear bombers on the flights from Moscow down to Cuba. We began seeing people stretching their legs a little bit, so we became wary. And not because we necessarily mean anything, but it's like a racehorse. You never know when to stop.
That's right. That's true. I used to own a few of those. I know what you're talking about. Well, with this incredible story, I mean, was it leaked to you with some special sources? I mean,
well, the Navy had began to. We get simple calls saying that we have pretty much the entire Chinese Navy off San Francisco. It's not compared to our Navy. They're fairly humorous.
Sure.
They were there. They were operating with Japanese. They were operating with South Koreans. We had as many as 5 of their nuclear submarines there. We were making no attempts to watch them at all. And, we have our own ships that head out, and we were getting reports that people were, they were afraid of running into. There were so many ships out there that we knew a military operation of some kind was going on. I didn't begin to guess. Now, one of the tough things here that we're going to break into right off is during the news you talked about the Gary McKinnon story.
Right.
McKinnon's claim is that he had hacked the records of essentially it was James Kirk and Starfleet. He found the pay records for us running a major extraterrestrial capability, and I have no knowledge specifically of that. But over a long career, let's say 43 years, working initially, I went to Vietnam as a private first class. But over a career, I worked at reasonable levels with the intelligence groups, and when I travel now, I meet typically with heads of intelligence agencies, chiefs of armies, or chiefs of state. It's not unusual, and frankly, there are 192 countries. You can't cross the street without running into a chief of state.
So you get some pretty heavy sources that come your way.
We get very heavy sources, and the first issue we got is, and this is where the leap has to be, that we're living, and this is why Gary McKinnon's important, and so many other people that come forward are important, that we have 2 sets of technologies. One they tell people about that we really have, and then one we know we have. Now, early on, I've got a couple of areas I work in. One of them is, as a corporation, we work in green energy. And as we work on government projects, we have people that work in classified areas. So